and welcome to the PocketGamer.biz podcast Week in Mobile Games, where we discuss the week's news and provide some insights. With Craig Chapple, head of content at PocketGamer.biz, and I'm not on my own this week. We're welcoming back Aaron Assel, our news editor. How you doing, Aaron? How was your time off?
Yes, good to be back. I enjoyed some nice time off. I went to Wales and saw my uni friend who I used to live with while I was studying. So it was nice. I haven't seen him since last year. It's good to catch up. And it just so happened to kind of fall over Halloween, which, to be honest, I don't usually do much for Halloween. But he roped me into dressing up and going out, not trick-or-treating, a little bit past that, I think. It was quite fun. We went to, I think it's called like Heatherton Maze on Halloween, which is like a big outdoor like hedge maze. It's like night time, so they send you in with a torch. So basically, all you can see is wherever the torch is shining. And then they've got like actors in there dressed up to scare you and chase you. Basically, if you go around a corner and then there's a guy with like a sack on his head who starts coming after you with a chainsaw. So you obviously run the other way, and then you get totally lost. Where you ended up, because they chase you for a little while.
That's terrifying.
It is a bit. Or then you hear, because there's obviously multiple people going around it, just hearing screams dotted all over the place as you go around. So yeah, that was quite good fun.
You made it out.
I did. It was big. It took us like an hour and a half to get out of there.
I'd love if you were like, it's supposed to take like 20 minutes, but we just got lost.
Yeah, I don't actually know how long it should have taken, but it was longer than we were expecting. But I don't know if it'll show up very well on my phone, but so I went as like a vampire.
Oh, yeah. Wow. You really got all out. That's great.
Yeah, thank you. I was quite pleased with how that turned out. So I don't think I've dressed up since I was probably like 11 or 12. So it was strange to do, but no, I was quite pleased with how that turned out. And then so going around the maze, also whenever someone kind of turned a corner and saw me, they jumped. So it was obviously a convincing costume.
Gosh.
They obviously thought I was one of the actors meant to like chase them, and it's like, no, I'm trying to get out as well.
It's funny that I might be misremembering. In Castlevania 64, I think there's like a maze section.
Right.
And so in my head I have it, maybe it was probably a vampire, but in my head I have it as you actually run into someone with a chainsaw.
Right.
There's vampires and chainsaws in a game.
Yeah.
You've like lived the experience.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so that was good. And then the other day, so I went to Pembroke Castle, quite like all the old historical stuff like that. Yeah. So yeah, it was a nice break. Obviously hence my absence from the podcast last week, but I have returned.
Everyone can rest assured, it's just not me chatting nonsense for 20 minutes. All right, thanks, Aaron. Yeah, but really great to have you back. I have had a few things on. I've been out of office, like in and out of office, I guess, for the past couple of months, really. But this week, but on Sunday, I did go. I also went to like a Halloween party, but it was just like a gathering of friends. That the children there as well. Everyone was dressed up. I'll show you pictures. So I kind of forgot to get something, and then I think it was Thursday night, no, it was Friday, having discussed with my friends the night before and immediately forgotten. And I was like, oh yeah, I need to buy something. Obviously went on Amazon. And I've been watching a lot of Celebrity Traitors. If people don't know what that is, The Traitors is a great TV show. It's in the UK, the US. So I think there's an Australian and Ireland one where there's like three contestants or maybe more picked to be the traitors, and then each night it's like a reality game show, and each night people vote who they think is a traitor and they vote them off, etc. They do challenges for money. Anyway, I've explained it really poorly, but it's a fantastic show. Celebrity one is very, very good. They actually got British celebrities, actual celebrities, Stephen Fry, Jonathan Ross, Loma Faith, a few others. Really good. So anyway, I bought a costume. In the show, that the traitors wear cloaks and they go up to I don't know what it is, like the eagle's nest high up in the tower, and then they decide who they're going to murder that night. I also bought a lamp, so I've cropped them out. So that's me and my traitors. I was very happy with myself, to be honest. I was really happy that I bought the lamp, and it was actually quite good. But anyway, yeah, had a great time. Halloween was fun. We'll do it again. Ooh. Right, we're gonna go. We'll jump into the news. We're back to talking about non-game stuff this week, which I kind of enjoy. So a few shout outs first. PGC, we've just done Pocket Gamer Connect's Korea, Pocket Gamer Connect Summit Korea, which is on October 31st. Apparently went very well. So we're looking forward to hopefully we'll go back there next year and go back to the region next year. There's a lot of exciting stuff obviously happening there. And then we've got PGC Aqaba on November 8th and 9th, so this weekend. So if you're listening to this, it'll either be during or just before the event kicks off. It's our big Middle East event. We also do, obviously, we've previously done like the Dubai event as well. Again, that's another region where there's a lot going on for games. And then our big show, Pocket Gamer Connects London, January 19th to 20th. I think this Thursday today, I think the early bird, whatever it is, super early bird is still on. When this comes out, just if you're interested in going, just check out prices. We do early deals for people that get their tickets way ahead of time. Right, we'll jump into the news. So obviously the day I was out, one of the biggest stories in the industry drops. So Google and Epic have reached a proposed settlement to open Android App Store access. Now, I talked about this a bit last week. So Google made some of their changes to enable alternative app stores and alternative payment methods in the US only, and that would run till 2027. But this might actually explain why there was a delay to this. It's really interesting, and I guess one of the key things is some of the rulings that affect the global market, not just the US market, which is the big one, right? Tim Sweeney seems very happy about all of this. It does need to be approved by the judge, but I guess if both parties are happy with it, we could see that approved. If I remember, this was the case from 2020. It's taken 5 years for us to get to this point. I've said before, but I guess kudos to Epic Games and Tim Sweeney for kind of for forcing through really these sweeping changes that benefit everybody. But I'll also go into that in a minute. So the new proposal will now let users download and install third-party app stores, provided they meet updated security and safety requirements. Developers will be able to steer users to alternative payment methods. There'll be a 9% and 20% service fee. Some of that depends on the third-party billing and in-app purchase types. So if I actually just go through this, I'm going to try and go through this document, the actual proposal. One of the most, some of it, I won't go into too much detail on some of it. Again, it's just alternative payments, right? That's one of the key takeaways. But there was a bit that actually just sort of confused me. I'm easily confused. So if I look at point 11, so I'm just going to read it. So for a period beginning no later than March 31st, 2026 through to June 30th, 2032. And then just quickly on that, so if you remember originally, I guess it would have started immediately, which Google did actually already implement changes in the US, and it would have run till November 2027. But now some of the dates have changed. So for this part, for a period beginning no later than March 31st, 2026 through June 30th, 2032, for digital goods, this is going to be legally, for digital goods purchases set forth in the second paragraph of this section, Google Play and Google Android shall not charge revenue proportionate or per purchase fees for apps first installed / updated from Google Play on or after October 30th, 2025, so new installs. Other than 1, the Google Play service fees set forth below, 2, fees for the use of Google Play billing, and 3, applicable taxes. Google shall independently determine its fees subject to limitations provided for below. So that was interesting as well. Curious how they calculate all of this, but this is for new installs, which is, so is that good or terrible? So existing users are still on the old fees? Anyway, that was interesting. But then it says, Google may not charge a service fee greater than 20% for in-app and linked purchases in games. 1, where such purchases provide more than a de minimis gameplay advantage, including but not limited to purchases that impact game outcomes, game progress rate, or player power. Or 2, purchases with random outcomes, such as loot boxes. And then it says, Google may not charge a service fee greater than 9% for 1, in-app and linked purchases in games where such purchases do not provide more than a de minimis gameplay advantage, including purchases for content, levels, events, or cosmetic items. 2, in-app subscriptions for apps. 3, in-app link purchases in non-game apps. And then it says, Google may not charge a service fee greater than 9%, excluding any Google Play billing fee, for apps sold up front in the Google Play Store. For For the avoidance of doubt, Google may charge the higher service fee for a bundle that includes items subject to 2 different service fees. For an in-app or linked purchase of virtual currency, which can be used to obtain multiple kinds of items whose service fees differ, the higher service fee may apply until and unless a portion of the virtual currency use can be attributed or prorated to items bearing the lower service fee, blah, 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 right? What strikes me here is that the case, you have to remember the case is Epic versus Google, and the PR about it, and you kind of believe Tim Sweeney, and he says it, because his actions have shown this, arguably, is they did it for everybody. It's not just for Epic, right? But then you look at this agreement. How does Fortnite monetize? It monetizes through cosmetics and a battle pass, right? Which gets you cosmetics. It does not monetize by, say, timers. It does not monetize by giving you a competitive advantage. You don't get boosts to complete levels, etc. So what they're charging for is the type of in-app purchase you have in a game, which I find really strange. Like, I think that's actually crazy to do. And it says, that's saying what type of in-game economy is okay and what type apparently is not. And so it's no greater than 20%, it could be less, but it won't, right? And that includes, but not limited to, purchases that impacts game outcomes, gameplay progress rate, or player power. Purchases with random outcomes such as loot boxes, right? So that's the higher tier. And then the 9% is for including purchases for content. So I guess that might be DLC, right? Levels. So I guess that's like you get an app and then more levels come out. It's basically DLC again. Events, interesting. Again, that might benefit Epic at some point. They do a lot of events. Or cosmetic items, which is Fortnite's economy. So it's less than it was. I just think that's kind of, this isn't what Tim sold everybody, right? This isn't working for everybody. And this is Tim specifically saying, so these are both billion-dollar companies, right? And so Tim Sweeney's the underdog in this scenario, but they're both both of these companies are very powerful. And this is saying what's okay and what's not okay based on opinions. Like, there's no, like, this. I feel like Google should at least be like, we don't like this kind of thing. I don't know. I just don't like that at all. Tim Sweeney said Google has made an awesome proposal subject to court approval to open up Android in the US Epic v Google case and our settlement disputes. It genuinely doubles down on Android's original vision as an open platform to streamline competing store installs globally, reduce service fees for developers of Google Play, and enable third-party in-app bids. This is a comprehensive solution, which stands in contrast to Apple's model blocking all competing stores and leaving payments as the only vector for competition. I'm actually, it's weird because I guess it's a good thing, but I think it's quite disappointing. What do you think, Aaron?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's sort of, I feel like it's changed just the dynamic kind of implicitly of like what the Play Store fees are for.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the argument, when it was 30% was like, well, it costs Google money to run and operate the Play Store, so they take a fee to keep it operational. But yeah, now to kind of charge people differently depending on what they're selling, surely that should have no bearing on, how expensive it is for Google to let their game be on the Play Store. So yeah, it seems weirdly punishing to sell like games with loot boxes, I guess gachas, stuff like that. And then it would just be like the games with DLC or cosmetics not getting charged as much. But I don't really see the justification for that other than just Google prefers it, maybe, so they're willing to charge less. But that's not really how the dynamic worked before, as far as I know. It was just, we charge this amount to operate the Play Store.
I just think that if I was to make an assumption, right, is that the two companies come together to negotiate. Google doesn't want to change, but is being forced to. Epic wants certain things. What can they get?
Yeah, I guess they would have fought harder for the ones that benefit them.
I guess maybe there was a compromise and be like, look, well, this is what we want. This is the way we monetize. This is to our benefit. Ultimately, like, what it does also do, obviously, is it opens up to alternative stores, so that benefits everyone, and it opens up to alternative payments. Yeah, I just think, and what happens in 2032? Who knows? I guess it's at least some of this. I think some of the rules were 2027, but at least like this is later, and surely I would assume things just carry on like they are now after 2032, to be honest. Like, what's the point in rolling back? It'll just piss off everybody.
Hmm.
But I guess that's the problem with monopolies. Doesn't matter.
Wonder if we'll see more mobile games going for like cosmetics or DLC type content as a result, or whether like web shops will take off enough that people don't really change their strategies.
It's just odd to me. The vast majority, I would say, of developers are now at the 20%, whereas Epic gets the 9%. All right, let's move on. So, Aaron, what else have you got?
Yeah, so a Nintendo story from me is that the Switch 2 has already sold 10.36 million units. That's as of the end of September. So that was the end of Nintendo's second quarter. So this means the Switch 2 crossed the 10 million mark within 118 days of its release, which is just under 4 months. Which makes it the fastest ever console to get to this milestone. So very impressive, obviously. No, Nintendo hasn't put out a direct comparison, at least from what I could see, to the kind of Switch's launch, kind of first 4 months. Conveniently, its 4 months were covered in Nintendo's financials back in 2017. Just kind of how the dates ended up landing for each console's release. So the original Switch, it was like 4.7 million units in 4 months. So the Switch 2's more than doubled it in the same time frame. And it's also got to 10 million in half the time the PS5 took. Apparently that was 8 months. Obviously that was kind of during the pandemic, so I think there were some issues with people being able to get hold of a PS5, but still, Switch 2 in half the time. So clearly very successful launch. I think we talked shortly after it released about how quickly it was racing through. It was like 5.8 million units in its first, by the end of June, so that was 26 days. It was out in June, I think. It was 5.8 million in its first month, basically. Another 4.5 million in the next 3 months. So obviously some slowdown, but kind of makes sense. The launch month would be huge. It's also kind of funny to note, and I guess just how stark a turnaround Nintendo's had over the past decade. 10 years ago, the Wii U was still the flagship home console, and over its lifetime, it sold 13.6 million units. The Switch 2 is already closing in on the Wii U's lifetime in 4 months, which is kind of crazy to think about, really. And Nintendo's latest financials kind of reflect this success in kind of net sales. So they were up 110% year over year over Nintendo's quarter 1 and 2 combined, when they made over $7 billion. Operating profit was up by about 20% to $941.6 million. Net profit was up by 83%, $1.3 billion. Yeah, clearly off to a very good start. I was also interested to see in the financials, because the Switch is still kind of trickling along as well. It sold nearly 2 million units over the first half of the financial year, so since April, and it's now about 10,000 sales away from being Nintendo's best-selling console. So it's 10,000 away from the DS now, which I'm sure is probably past that already by now. So these figures go up to the end of September, which is just a cool milestone. So I think it's only the PS2 left to go for the Switch to overtake now. Whether it will end up getting there or if Switch 2 will kind of cannibalize it by then. I think Sony kind of changed how much the PS2 had sold as the Switch closed in. So I think the PS2 is now at 160 million. So the Switch is about 6 million away now. It'd be funny if they change it again, because it was previously 150 plus. Then the Switch hit 150 and Sony said, it's actually 160. But one other thing that I thought was kind of noteworthy in the financials. So on the kind of presentation side, Nintendo briefly highlighted their mobile stuff, their apps and games portfolio apparently combined has surpassed 950 million unique installs. They also drew attention to Fire Emblem Shadows, which released in the last few days of the quarter. Unsurprisingly, they didn't kind of reveal any figures on it. I guess even if it did really well, it was only around for 3 days or something in the quarter. But according to AppMagic estimates, it's not had a great start. I think it would be fair to say. It's generated an estimated like $200,000 in its first 30 days. So compared to like Fire Emblem Heroes, which is Nintendo's biggest mobile game, that was less than 0.4% of its first month back in the day, back in 2017.
All right, moving on. So, we got I did the October mobile game charts, brought it back finally. So we looked at some AppMagic data, the top revenue generators, top downloads for October. That's games and publishers. So I had a couple takeaways. One of the first ones, we've spoken a bit about this before. I think, Aaron, you wrote about it last year to talk about like 2024 in hindsight, and which is one of the big stories is like the new games, the new rising games kind of continuing to scale. And like one of the mobile gaming stereotypes is that the top charts don't change, but there are a new kind of wave of hits creeping up. One of those is Kingshot by Century Games, who we ranked number 1 in this year's top 50 mobile game makers list. AppMagic estimates that the title generated $108.7 million in gross revenue last month, which was its best month yet. So Kingshot was actually the 8th top grossing mobile game in the world's App Store Google Play revenue in October, which is amazing. So, and then their bigger game, Whiteout Survival, which has been out a bit longer, ranked 6th. So they have 2 top 10 revenue generating games, but one of them a new one. And then if you look at some others, so Gossip Harbour from Microfund, now the biggest merge game in the world, picks up 96.5 million. Dream Games' Royal Match rose to 18th. And then if you look at some in the top 25 over the last few years that have released over the last few years, you've got Delta Force, Pokemon trading card game Pocket, of course, SD Gundam, G Generation Eternal, what a name, and Love and Deep Space, all up there. And it's not a new title, of course, but Clash Royale is up there, right? I put like his growth is like halted, but it's still made an estimated $100 million last month, and that is not including obviously like Supercell's own sort of marketplace where players can buy stuff. One of the big stories as well is that PUBG Mobile has had a massive decline. So it ranked. I know everyone's going to be shocked at how bad it's doing. It ranked as low as 14th in the world in October. Technically still doing all right. However, it's quite a dramatic fall. So in August, it was estimated to have generated $187.3 million from player spending. This includes the China version of Peacekeeper Elite on the App Store only there. By October, it picked up basically $60 million. So it's like a third of what it was making. China revenue was like the catalyst was such a massive drop. It also declined significantly in September, carried that on in October. So to find out what's going on, I did ask Nico Partners' Director of Research and Insights, Daniel Ahmad. So thank you to him for the insights that he gave. Basically, what's going on with Peacekeeper Elite in China. Because it's hard to have actual visibility in what's going on there, and Nico Partners kind of the experts here. So he noted a dramatic swing on the iOS App Store may not be completely representative of its performance, as Apple devices account for a quarter of all mobile devices used in China. He also highlighted Android's large market share and growing presence of Harmony OS in the premium segment. His quote reads quickly, Delta Force is also generating higher revenues than Peacekeeper Elite at this point. Notably, all are Tencent titles. Peacekeeper Elite, as with most mobile games, often sees its revenue vary on a weekly basis, with spikes primarily driven by in-game updates and events. We believe that the main reason for declining iOS revenue is increased competition at this point, but he said to note that there was a similar revenue decline followed by a recovery in December 2024. So this has actually happened before. A chart and story, I don't have the specific figure in front of me, but for example, it looks like it was about 70, between 70 and 80 million that it made in December 2024. Obviously a massive amount of money, which is not that far from what it made in October 2025. And then it just surged to what looks like 180 million or something. It's happened before. So this is not necessarily indicative of a long-term crash for PUBG. It could be, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. He said, in addition, we know that there was a spate of complaints around misleading promotional events a couple months ago. Players had purchased in-game currency as per the promotion, but were not able to purchase the advertised items. But he said he doesn't think this is a major factor. So that was really interesting. Those were kind of the biggest takeaways. Some other interesting things was this game called X Clash Dare. If no one has heard of X Clash, it's by a company called Bing Chuan Network from China. They previously made X Hero and Hero Clash, and I'm not sure, but I feel like they were maybe one of the first to sort of. I'm probably wrong, but I feel like they're one of the more notable companies that they basically put like really like hyper casual trends as like the gameplay hook, and that's all the creators on the store. But it's actually a 4X strategy game. So I remember playing, I think it was X Hero, and you get this like map on, and you go around, you can do stuff, but you can all optional is to play these hyper casual games. I think to get like I don't even know what you get, currency or something. And you can play those, but the main game is actually the 4X strategy. But you don't see that until you downloaded it, which other games are doing, but this one just seems a bit weirder. But X Clash Dare had 18.5 million downloads suddenly in October. Massive rise. Picked up about $2.1 million from player spending. Previously, this has happened with their games. They have like 1 month where they get loads of downloads and then it doesn't do that again. So curious if they'll continue with the user acquisition in November, but that's kind of it for that. And then we won't hear about it. We won't hear from them again for a few years. Just to say the top, as quickly then, just to round this out, the top grossing games in October were Honor of Kings from Tencent, Last War Survival from Funfly, also called First Fun, Roblox, Monopoly Go from Scopely, Royal Match from Dream Games. 5 most downloaded were Blockbuster from Hungry Studio, Roblox, Free Fire Max from Garena, X Clash Dare, which is number 4 from Bing Chuan Network, and Subway Surfers from Cybo / Miniclip / Tencent, and then just a couple of the top. So top downloaded publishers were Azure Games, Miniclip, Baby Bus, Say Games, and Voodoo, and the top grossing were Tencent, Citric Games, Funfly, Dream Games, Playrix. So Aaron, what else have we got?
Yeah, so the other one from me is about Pokemon trading card game Pocket, which you mentioned there, released last year. It's continuing to do very well. So it was actually just its first anniversary at the end of October 30th. And firstly, I can't believe it's been a year already. Yeah, what a year it's been, really. So according to AppMagic estimates, it's made $1.3 billion, which is more than Pokemon Go made in its first year. Go was sort of just over $1 billion, which obviously is still a lot of money. But yeah, I don't think anyone really saw it coming, a year ago or just over a year ago then. This new Pokemon card game would have a bigger first year than Go. But apparently it has. We've talked about it many times before, but I think there's just a lot that they did right with the game. Like it launched really focusing on kind of the 90s nostalgia. It had like the original 151 Kanto Pokemon, kind of had an online version of what would have been like playground rumours of how to get Mew specifically. People used to wonder how you could get Mew in Red and Blue. And then it was kind of the same here, that it was like a secret card that you couldn't just get from a pack. You had to meet certain kind of hidden requirements to unlock it. So I think that kind of helped generate some buzz and conversation around launch. And then really since then, it's kind of just powered on, kind of leaning into different eras of Pokemon. And I guess it would be interesting to know whether that reflects in kind of which players are spending, but certainly they have focused on different eras. Like early this year, they kind of moved on from the 90s to 2006 games, Diamond and Pearl, which were on the DS. So there was a few months kind of focused around that era of Pokemon. Then a few months later, they did an expansion based on the 3DS games, Sun and Moon. More recently, end of the summer, they had packs based on the Game Boy Color games, Gold and Silver. So they're kind of darting around a bit, I guess, to make the most of kind of the different eras and perhaps different age groups, kind of nostalgia for Pokemon. Though I've played since launch, I'm not particularly nostalgic for like the Kanto Pokemon over the others. So I started with the DS era. I know a few people my age who didn't download Pocket until they got to like the Diamond and Pearl Pokemon in like late January, because that was, for them, they're the ones they grew up with. Like
That's sacrilege, I'm afraid. It's the first 150 are the best.
Well, some of them are good. Squirtle has a soft spot in my heart, but yeah, no, I like the Kanto Pokemon. They're just, I say, I would be curious to know, whether the kind of focusing on different eras does actually get different people spending, or whether it's kind of just the collectors who want all the cards. I guess on the more kind of numbers side again. So at launch, the Pocket hit 10 million installs in 3 days. It went on to 100 million in 4 months. Most recently, it hit 150 million just before the anniversary. So again, kind of some slowdown as you would expect, but still a lot of installs. And then, kind of on the earnings side, based on Magic estimates again, the game's most lucrative single day was actually February 1st this year, which I was quite surprised by that it wasn't kind of closer to launch. So that was actually just a few days after the Diamond and Pearl expansion came out, which at the time that was kind of the most cards they'd added since launch. They introduced like more than 200 new cards. So I guess that was largely responsible as well, because December and January had been a bit of a decline because there weren't a lot of new things to get after the initial October, November. And I would say just 1.3 billion in a year, which I certainly wouldn't complain at that much.
It's all right, isn't it? Like obviously one of the biggest mobile game launches of recent years. Well done to DNA for doing that. A couple quick, the one thing I did want to note actually is I guess under the new Google Play rules, presumably this would get a 20% charge, Pokemon trading card game, and not the 9%. Because I guess two things, it would be kind of like a loot box situation.
I was going to say
it's random cards, and then they also give you a gameplay advantage depending on what you get. 20% for not 9. If only they were just cosmetic and they did nothing in the game. A couple quick, very, very quick other stories. I just really wanted to give a quick mention. One of them was, so the Space Ape developed BeatStar and Country Star have now gone offline as of October 31st, 2025, which is quite sad, I think. Space Ape had grown to this kind of fairly sizable UK studio. I think it had a mixture of success and things that weren't so successful. BeatStar seemed to do pretty well. Then the long story, right? It gets fully acquired because it was technically acquired many years ago. Fully acquired last year, turned into Supercell London, like the foundation for that studio. So fully acquired by Supercell. And then NextBeat span off with SpaceX co-founder Simon Hayes, and then they took with them Country Star and BeatStar. But then shortly after that, a few months later or so, there was an acqui-hire, I guess. Duolingo bought the majority. Duolingo scooped up, acquired, however you want to put it, the majority of the NextBeat team. They're now at Duolingo doing sort of cool music game things, and then a few people were left to manage BeatStar Country Star. It was announced before it was going offline. Now it's gone. Kind of sad. In a way, it's kind of sad for the UK games industry. But a lot of that team did go on to some success. And then the other thing, shout out, we had the exclusive this week, which was a UK-based mobile game studio called Iron Games, set up by former executives at Merge Dragons developer Grand Games, had received $4 million from early-stage venture platform Arcadia Gaming Partners, which was set up by Akin Babiagit's Triple Dot co-founder, who was, I guess, now famously called the mobile gaming kingpin. Was it Bloomberg or something like that? They called him that. And we gave him the Mobile Legends Award at the Mobile Games Award this year as well. So that's one of the first publicly announced deals from his $100 million fund. Curious to see what else they've got cooking. So that brings us to the end of the week in mobile games. Thank you very much, Aaron, for being on the show as always. Good to have you back. I'm sure everyone's happy to have you back, not just me yabbering on.
Thank you. Good to be back.
But I still did talk a lot. Thank you, everyone, for listening. As always, we're back again next week. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any feedback, please do reach out and let us know. Otherwise, have a good weekend. We'll see you soon. Goodbye.